first of all, this is the first time I've had a sport coat on in many, many months, so you're lucky. Welcome and thank you for joining us for this leadership speaker event. I will say at the outset, if you'd like to ask a question, please do so via the chat function, and we'll get to those as soon as we're done with our discussion. So, where do we find ourselves? The pandemic has impacted economies with consumers pulling back on spending as they encounter additional uncertainty. The crisis, as we know, is also coinciding with a period of social unrest amid protests and calls for justice. This leaves the business community in a quandary as it sorts out how to market brands and products and launch consumer campaigns effectively while also being extremely sensitive to the challenges people are facing right now. Additionally, we've seen impact on fan behavior in the form of viewership decreases across the board, especially in terms of live sports and fans engaging with properties and so forth. So I'm especially grateful to have an expert provide all the answers for us. I'm joined tonight by John Schwartz, who, by the way, is in the office, braving the new environment. So thank you, sir. Yes. For those of you who do not know John, he is a professional of 20 plus years working at agencies and in-house at Fortune 200 companies and in sports. Not too long ago, he helped steer communications at NASCAR, and now he's doing the same for the NFL. So he is an expert at building integrated marketing communications. He did so at NASCAR, award-winning programs. He's also an advisory board member of the Shirley Povich Center for Sports Journalism at his alma mater, University of Maryland, and also proudly a fellow NYU Tisch Institute for Global Sport adjunct professor. So, John, grateful to have you.
So good to be with you all. Thanks for joining on a busy Wednesday.
It'll be fun. So listen, two areas of discussion tonight. The first is around project management during crisis. And the second is re-engaging the fan. And all are related to kind of behavior, right? Across the board. So we're going to dig into both. But we'll begin with project management and the concept of launching campaigns during crisis. COVID-19, it's an understatement to say that it's having a drastic impact on if, how, and when brands go to market. Companies are evaluating projects and prioritizing those that offer, perhaps the greatest benefit, especially in the short term, because costs are being scrutinized. And the result is that projects are significantly being scaled back. They've been reimagined for the virtual space. Some of you have probably engaged with those or experienced them. Some are being put on the shelf permanently, and some are kind of being shelved temporarily. It might be brought back at a different time. So leaders like John are kind of using this time to assess overall project performance. And this is a time that I think can serve as an opportunity to take a step back and assess and see what can be done differently as we start to kind of reconnect with each other in different ways. And ideally provide a roadmap, I think, in other words, for improved operations, cost control, stakeholder and fan engagement. But at the end of this, what has been uncovered is a huge issue, and that is deficits in project management and integration specifically. So, John, just to kind of kick it off, I'll throw out to you, what do you see as some of the main challenges with going to market in this current environment?
Yeah, well, with the fewer projects and initiatives, the more reason that you've got to get it right the first time. And I think that we live in a very, very nuanced culture. It's very difficult because the spotlight is so white and it's so hot on everything we do. As if you work at a sports property or a brand, you've got to get it right. And in many ways, particularly in a pandemic and due to the racial and social injustice that we've undergone in these last few months, sometimes it requires a little bit more hands-on. It's kind of like tuning a guitar, right? Years ago, you used to develop a plan, based on research. You have a hypothesis, you develop your objectives, your strategies, and your tactics, and you go and you share it with all of your constituents or the other departments. Now we're focused on doing that in a remote environment where you can't swing by a colleague's office. You don't have physical meetings. The last sort of check off, the last little conversation you could have to sort of tweak the guitar to tune it the right way doesn't happen. Next thing you know, you launch something on a Monday morning. A myriad of events could occur over a weekend, or even over an hour, and you don't have the benefit of being around one another to sort of tweak it or move it or just punt altogether, to use a football metaphor. So I think that's a huge challenge. And another one is for those of you that have work in and around organizations that have mid-size or large organizations that have multiple departments. What you're finding is that each of those entities within the large entity, have their own channels. They're all on their own social media handles. Perhaps there's some other form of communication in the form of a distribution list, or a small subgroup for which each of those departments communicates. And it's important to have one message. And if you don't have one message, and if you don't have one plan, then they conflict, they conflate, and they could even cannibalize one another. So it is very hard to launch a campaign in real time in today's culture, and in today's environment when we're in person, let alone working remotely. So I'd say those are the biggest challenges in launching and going to market in this environment.
Yeah, interesting. And just staying on the kind of going to market concept, and considering everything that we are enduring right now, can you effectively market while also being sensitive to the challenges that you've kind of described that people are kind of facing right now? And if so, like what factors have to be considered?
The answer to the question is yes. We better be able to,
Yeah.
as marketers and as communicators. But it's so easy to make a mistake. And there's been a lot of talk about cancel culture and what that means for you as an individual, or you as a brand, or you as an organization. It's actually easier to make a mistake than it is to have any easy measure of success. When years ago, I think there was more of a benefit of the doubt given to a brand that was launching an initiative. And it's hard not to be clumsy when you're dealing with fallible human beings that are at the controls of multiple different channels. It's just really, really hard. And but when we think about going to market in a way that's empathetic and honest and sort of straightforward, all of those things have to be considered. How is this message going to resonate relative to what just happened? There was a presidential debate, and this topic came up, and it's germane because of X, Y, and Z. Or there's a developing story either in your sport or with your brand. How do you not acknowledge that? It almost seems dishonest if you don't. So all of that, it requires you to, so for those of you who are familiar with carpentry, I don't know how many of you are, but there's the carpenter's axiom, which is measure twice, cut once. This environment is causing you, we all need to measure 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Is this really right? Does this feel right? Bounce it off somebody else, let it review again, because you only have one chance to get it right. And even in today's day and age, what actually allows you to be more nimble, so social media, obviously it lasts forever. So if you get it wrong, I was watching, there's a brand that launched, there was a launch today in another sport that's close to my heart. I'm gonna protect the names of the innocents, but in NASCAR, they had a launch today, and one of the channels just broke, and it was very clear, and it actually broke sub news, and it distracted from the great news that they had. And I just don't think it was fair, because there was somebody who made a clerical error, and they actually got called out on it by journalists. completely unfair. But those are the realities we're dealing with when we're in a remote working environment.
Makes sense. So again, sticking with this topic, so say you do your process and you measure multiple times and you kind of come up with the right formula for your project and your go-to-market strategy. You also are competing with many other things that are out there, right, in the universe. So, like, how do you kind of break through the clutter, so to speak? Is there a secret sauce there, or what do you think?
Well, look, I mean, it's a great question, and it's a question that we marketers have been asking for, I don't know, decades, I would guess. And that how do we be different? How do we own vote?
Right.
A great example is voting. The NFL is involved in voting. NBA is involved in voting. It's seemingly every brand is involved in voting. It's great. It's nonpartisan. It's hard to argue. Go out and vote. Exercise your civic duty. It's clean. It's crisp, and in many ways, it's non-controversial. Now we're in the challenge of like that's in the brand, and pretty much every brand's sweet spot, but how does it stand out? How does that not feel different if you're the NBA or the NFL or NHL, if you're paying attention to votes? Now for us, I think the votes thing started with active listening to our players. Our players interested in social justice issues.
Right.
They're interested in also doing much more than throw money at the problem. What are tell me the exact things you're going to do in my community to affect change? And one of them resoundingly was help us promote voting. Now, the good news is that the program that we launched was really truly 100% came from listening to the players and really active listening. So what do you want? What's important to you? The challenge is we're in a very crowded marketplace for votes. So the opportunity for us, I mean, I'm following what some of the other brands are doing. And what I love about the marketing in today's landscape is it seems as if what's old is always new. I saw a really cool. I don't know if any of you caught what I think it was Advance Auto Parts did with their Die Hard brand, the Die Hard batteries.
Bruce
They brought,
Willis, I think. Yeah.
right, they brought back Bruce Willis, and he basically filmed the scene of Die Hard 12, but in today's day and age and throughout it, it's just some dude trying to change a battery. But it very well done, action sequence, very funny, and it caught my attention. Another thing I'm following a bit is sort of the brands that can do it in a smart way and in a new way, but with a story arc. So um, I saw a good one. I think it was yesterday. Some of you may have caught the piece that GMC put out with LeBron, and he's out and he's talking about the Hummer EV, the electronic vehicles, zero emissions, and it was cool because what made it cool for me was that they didn't identify that it was LeBron. That I picked up that it was his voice, and it sort of made me think back, well, wait a minute, there was some deal with LeBron and the Hummer. And oh my God, back then it was controversial. There was questions of whether he got, his mother purchased the vehicle and whether it was purchased for her and whether it violated NCAA regulations or may have messed up his eligibility. And all the while, the brand is intentionally being provocative, sort of giving you this little clue and having you go find what the meaning was and why there is a story arc and making you curious. And this, for me, it's the what's old is new. I think about what's going to happen this week in the NFL. We've got Drew Brees and Tom Brady basically probably you're probably going to see over the next couple of months, they're basically going to be exchanging the touchdown record back and forth, back and forth. And that's kind of interesting because it harkens back to, who held it before and what was that like and what are some historic chases. I'm thinking about other sports where guys were, and girls were exchanging records. And, I think that when there's a story arc or when we can go back in time and talk about how a brand has evolved, that's cool. That interests me.
Makes sense. Thank you. So all this is super insight, and now I'll twist it up a little bit. So we are now, say, in a post-pandemic economy. everything you've talked about makes sense, and it's probably good practice. So, do we keep the same strategies? Do you think things will change, or stay the same?
Well, I usually don't make a lot of sense, so that means it's
We're onto something.
we're onto something. Yes, everything changes. We are forever changed by the pandemic. We will never ever see full offices again. Full stop. Period. 80%, 90% maybe, but I think about this giant move that we've seen over the last year and a half, 2 years of corporation. And I'm preaching to the choir. All this about corporations moving to this open concept, collaborative teams thing, and runs contrary to everything what we've been told over the last 8 months, which is if there's no plexiglass divider between me and the person serving me my burrito, or me helping a customer, or me collaborating with a coworker, I'm not, count me out. And we're back, we're moving away from the workstations and back to the offices. And so I think that's going to change forever. And I think health and safety, people were already paying close attention to living healthy lifestyles, whether it be eating right or getting good exercise. And now I think what we're seeing is people paying extra close attention to the habits they have and their employers have around, is my environment clean and safe? And so probably can pick up a piece of PPE somewhere that's close by, or some cleaning product or device or whatever. That is forever going to change. And so is, I think, I mean, obviously we're on a Zoom, so this is not going away. It's only going to get better. I think about, some other technology that came before Zoom that maybe may or may not be working now. There will be innovators that come along the way that perfect the technology. And but I will say what's incredibly important, no matter what industry you work in, and I see a few names that I recognize, and it's good diversity of folks in different industries, is you cannot underestimate the power of hallway conversations. The commissioners walked by 10 times today, all colleagues, friends, employees, who I work with, and that is super valuable. Even if they have a mask on their face, even if they're sitting in that chair, social distancing, it's super valuable to be there in person. So much gets done. And I think, can you be productive at home? I mean, we were talking a little bit about with Vanessa when we were waiting for everyone to join, is yeah, the answer is yes. I mean, depending on how you're wired, sure, absolutely. Are there pros and cons? Absolutely, there are. What are the pros of working, getting the NBA and the NHL season off with full playoffs and a championship? A lot. Revenue is on the line, livelihoods were on the line, and the insatiable appetite from America's sports fan was on the line. Unintended consequence down the road, 190 days, 90 to 100 days away from your family. It's very possible that there are going to be some serious mental health issues coming out of it, again, unintended, down the road. So that's something that we got to keep a close eye on.
You also talk about, John, and you've shared it with me too, just in our conversations, kind of, don't forget the power of showing love, right? And respect and appreciation. Can you talk about that in this environment of remote versus in-house, and even as it relates to project management?
I just think I think that we are in a show me culture, right? Show me what you've done. Fill my email box with reports on things that showcase that you did your job, right? And which is great, right? And it's great to sort of have metrics and things like that. But I think the intangibles are, how do you reach down and lift someone up, who's more junior to you, or is a colleague, or someone who is a student, or who you met earlier in your life, or how do you compliment somebody who's a peer or a supervisor? And how do you do it in a way that sort of increases collaboration? And I'm a big believer, I've been places where that's been important, of showing your love to other people, so that they will see the value in collaborating with you, because you see the value in collaborating with them. That's being part of a team. That's showing a teammate that you care for them, and by the way, the work they're doing is critical for your success as well.
So you'd say key part of the strategy, right? working together, working with others, that seems to be paramount. So that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Uh, um, so yeah, if you want to elaborate that, you can. If not, I'll move on.
Yeah.
We are going to transition here shortly, but last question, John. So is this like a reality check? Like, are we finally finding all these inefficiencies in our workplace and even in our relationships that we kind of usually tolerate, but like, can we now better recognize, understand what we can do better? Can we pave the way for, as they say, a better future? Especially as it relates to project management and working with others. Like, is this a reality check?
I
All
think
this?
I of course everything's a reality check. And if it's not, you're not learning. You're not you don't have the um this intellectual curiosity that you need to move you forward. And obviously, if you've signed up for this talk at 4 o'clock with two old timers, you are you do have intellectual curiosity. You're here to learn, or you're here to sort of maybe pick up something, whatever that is. And I think that's something that will never change, and it should never change. I think the mistake that we make is that it's easy to get very comfortable, and it's easy to get comfortable in the relationships we currently have, right? And so relationships are definitely currency, and we rely on them. If you are dealing with a journalist and you need that journalist to help you, and you need to help her, and we will have that relationship. um, the reality is that I may she may not and I may we may not be as helpful to one another in a year from now. So we need to continue to evolve our relationships. We need more diversity in our relationships. I don't mean racial or gender diversity. I mean just full up diversity, because the power brokers are changing. The people who are pulling the strings and who are influencing the influencers, which is a term that gets thrown around a lot. You need to form new relationships. And I think the people who have been left behind by the pandemic have not evolved their thinking. How many good examples? How many of you were familiar with Emmanuel Acho a year ago? Maybe a couple. He was
Right.
on Fox Sports One, and maybe you followed his career. But the reality is he's becoming somebody who is extremely compelling, has a strong opinion, putting out very, very important content, having uncomfortable conversations with a black man, which is his platform, which is part of the Harpo production Oprah network. And the reality is that if you hope to deal with him one day, or if you end up dealing with him or somebody like him or someone who is doing the kind of work that he is doing, you need to have a relationship, whether it's
Right.
in good times or in bad times. And so if you don't have those relationships, if you're not diversifying your portfolio of people, whatever industry you are, you're going to fall behind. And I think that's the real challenge, right? Everyone uses, we all think we're master collectors, right? Of people and relationships, so that we use them down the road, whether it be with somebody who can help you in your career or somebody who can help you personally. The challenge is that we tend to default to what's most comfortable to us. And those are the 3 or 4 people that have been surrounded us for a couple decades. You need more, and you need more diversity of thought. I think that's one thing that's missing big time. If you have not put someone else in your cabinet, added a close advisor, a close confidant, or somebody who you have a relationship with in the last year that's new, you're missing out. And don't let a pandemic get in the way of that. Arguably, that now it's much easier and less time consuming and more affordable to do coffee or drink over Zoom than it is to devote an afternoon to it.
Amen. Thank you, John. So we're going to switch to kind of the concept of re-engaging fans in the live televised events, in this case, sports. Programmers must now find new ways to engage viewers and fans so that they are interested, they're inspired, they're watching, they're sharing, and most importantly, they're coming back. So, John, I'll throw it to you. Like, what factors contribute to the challenges that face a league like perhaps the NFL or rights holders when it comes to grabbing consumer attention?
Well, shifting consumption behaviors has been a topic for the last 7 years. So much so that I'm sure everyone is tired of talking about it and reading about it. The reality for me, as as a father and an uncle and a nephew, is that I have other things pulling at my time. And now in a pandemic, it's even more challenging because the days that I work from home, my schedule is completely different. It doesn't always necessarily include or allow me to act the same way around my love of sports. And so, sure, the schedules are all jacked up. There's homeschooling happening. The time spending watching sports has shifted. Um, what's fascinating for me, though, this year in particular, is there was a lot of discussion over the past 5 years about sports ratings. Right when I was at NASCAR, there was a lot of discussion. Ratings are up or down or flat or year over year, and there was a talk about everybody's changing their consumption habits, relax. But in reality, if you had a bad, 2016 was a terrible year for everybody, and it was also election year. You keep that in mind. And what I think is happening now is that everyone's getting a pass. It's a different year. It's okay, but we need to figure out why, and we need to figure out what we're doing to sort of stem those losses. And what we know right now is that the reasons why we're seeing a loss of viewership, big three, certainly the impact of COVID on everyone's habits, time shifting. That's pretty obvious. I mentioned the election year. Why is an election year important? Well, for many people, particularly viewers who are in an older demographic, less desirable for a marketer, but certainly a huge volume contributor to ratings and viewership, is pushing people away from live sports programming to cable news, which is identical to what we saw in 2016. And the last one is this crazy time we're in. We have all this competition in the fall. Is it, do I expect to watch basketball and hockey in the fall? Yes, absolutely. Do I expect to see the NBA finals and the Stanley Cup finals in the fall? Absolutely not. My brain can't process. I don't have muscle memory around watching LeBron hoist the NBA Finals trophy in October. I'm tuned to watch baseball and football. And so all of those things are conflating and combining to, having everyone making their own concessions. But people are getting a pass. And in 16, we have to remember there were no passes. It was the sky is falling, sports are dying. Go out and buy, get it while you can, because people are going to be out soon. And I think what we need to start thinking about is how are we squirreling away our plans to help bring people back to the telecast when things sort of get back to normal.
Echo that. He was kind of living and dying on the ratings, and the fluctuation, while outside voices were telling you that, listen, there are more metrics to look at, social, digital, and so forth. So I guess I would ask, has the pandemic kind of changed behavior so far down the road that we can't kind of like change anymore, and it becomes more difficult for sports to kind of recover for when life does come back to normal? Is our linear nature just completely has it been abolished? Like, are there ways to kind
No,
of get us back?
no. The importance of linear TV will continue to evolve, but I don't believe linear will ever get away from the importance of the almighty ratings point, and it cannot be ignored. Should we be spending time on streaming and digital and driving people to other? Absolutely, yes, absolutely. We need to keep doing it. But linear TV is continues to be the lifeblood of any sports property, because that's where the revenue is. That's where the media rights dollars are. And I think the next one, the next thing you look ahead 6, 12 months is going to be okay, well, what does this mean for the live sporting event? How is that going to change? How are we going to get people back to the ballpark, back to the stadium, back to the arena? That's the next discussion we're going to be having. And I'm not that sure I'm not sure we're prepared for what that looks and feels like.
Yeah, I mean, do you think there will be kind of an overcorrection? You know, kind of trying a lot of different things that might be like baseless, or is there a sense of desperation?
Yeah, I mean, look,
What's your sense?
I
You
think
probably talk to different operators and so forth.
no, I feel like that's going to be the next one that we're going to be talking a lot about and paying a lot of attention to. And we're going to be talking about protocols and PPE and all that stuff. But, I think back to the days of Bill Veeck and what he did for minor league baseball. And I believe that there will be
Yeah.
a massive amount of promotion and discounting and bells and whistles, to the degree that a property is comfortable doing that. There's going to be that. I mean, that's the market will absolutely correct itself. Um, but I believe that where the big sports properties and brands that do business in sports, where we're going to land is they're going to revert back to what's the real reason I'm going to the ballpark? What's that value
Right.
proposition? Why is being there live so important, so invigorating, so thrilling? So I can't miss it. I was there. And I think that's going to cause every brand to go again, this retro. Right? We're going to go back to like, why did I start? I think about that first MasterCard commercial with the father and son bonding at a baseball game, making a memory for a lifetime. I think we're going to see more creative like that. And I think we're going to see more scenes like that because the reality is that son or that daughter is now going from, being a toddler to being, a kindergarten or first grader. And they will have missed a few quality years of being, or maybe a few quality months, or hopefully it's not years, of being at a live sporting event.
It's a good segue to my next question. One that, we've, as you kind of alluded to before, we've heard probably ad nauseum, and no one's really cracked the code, but everyone wants to try to. Studies have shown, I know there was a recent report by Morning Consult that the decline in viewership could potentially be tied to this decreasing number of sports fans among Gen Z, which is kind of the magical demographic. Many of you are Gen Z, so we're talking directly to you. An Aspen Institute study came out, like, kids just aren't engaging with sports as much. So, are you, number one, concerned that, maybe we're not reaching the younger audiences with content and engagement and so forth? And two, like, how do you then go and attract that younger crowd to kind of come along with you along the journey?
I think all brands and sports properties worth their salt are talking about ways in which to get millennials and Gen Zs back
Yeah.
in or in, full stop. And I think that's part of every marketer's toolkit and playbook. And if it's not, it should be. That said, I think that it's very important to come out and say it. I think it's okay to say, yeah, we want to get younger. We are looking for young people to come in to our sport, and you represent millions and millions of people, and you a huge segment of our audience, and you're the future. I think brands think that, um, I don't think that Gen Zs are fooled by, oh, they're marketing to me, but they're not saying it. I think you have to come out and say it. I think about, um, you know, sometimes brands feel like they need to go the medium is the message, the Marshall McLuhan method, which is, find that channel that reaches a particular audience. And I think Gen Z's to see right through that. I think about what we did this month. We know that there are 10 to 15 million NFL fans that identify as LGBTQ plus. Great. We've never marketed to them. But we have never, well, maybe we have, but we've never said it. And I like, why not just saying, hey, hey, I'm talking to you. And that's okay. I'm talking to women. I'm talking to African Americans 18 to 34. I think brands should come out and say it. I think that's empowering and liberating. I don't think we need to hide the playbook from anybody.
Yeah, there's like a certain honesty, right? Honesty in marketing is probably lacking in a lot of different industries, and I can appreciate that. And there's a genuine voice that is speaking to you. Are there other segments of your fan bases that you're going to do the same thing with?
Yeah, yes. I think where we're seeing our greatest right now, we're seeing the greatest losses on TV and some demographics that are our bread and butters. Um, I also think that there's a temptation for all sports properties to sort of say, okay, we're going after youth and we're going
Do
after.
you feel like there's more to be done?
Yeah, I do. I do. If you could still, yeah, I think you're going to see more brands coming out and saying, I'm marketing to uh, black male and females between the ages of 18 and 34.
Right.
And I think we're going to see more brands do it through the lens of where is our sport right now versus just like right now we've got a huge campaign around social justice. And now does
Right.
that resonate with African Americans? Yes, sure, absolutely. I mean, that's important. But in many ways, what brings African Americans in, what brings, are the same things that bring Hispanics in, the same thing that brings older white males in, which is rivalries, matchups, records, high scoring, dynasties, and stars. They still gravitate towards that. The challenge is how do you reach a demographic that's just hard to reach. I think you need to start by saying you're going after it, and then get after it hard with storytelling. I know that sounds trite, but the reality is there's a lot of brands out there that haven't figured it out yet, or
Right.
they're not as prescriptive as they need to be. I think it's okay to be prescriptive.
Great. Thank you. And just a reminder, if you do have questions, please feel free to use the chat function, and we'll get to those shortly. So, John, just on the same kind of topic, in order for you to find who you should on data, are you
You froze up.
relying on more other marketing? Oh,
Oh, I got you now. Keep going.
am I back? Okay,
Yep.
sorry. um, are you using data? Oh shoot, am I froze
Yeah.
still?
Yes, absolutely. I think every good marketing communication plans should start and end with data. Um, what do we know about that market, that demographic, that age group that would encourage them to tune in, that would incentivize them to buy or engage? And that should be what you write your objectives off of. And that should be the North Star for every single person at your entity that is involved in said project. Because if we don't know what the target is, we're lost. And then I think there needs to be good measurement on the back end. There needs to be an understanding of what success looks like. And I think for many years, their big sports properties have taken for granted, um, you know, uh, things like how important it is to encourage people to tune in, or what the game time is, or what why it's important not to miss the pregame show, as an example, or the pre-race show, for my friends at NASCAR who are joining. So yeah, again, I can't, you can't, if you are not in lockstep with your comms or marketing teams on data, you're making a big mistake. And I think people are getting wise to the fact that a data-based comms and marketing approach are now just table stakes. You're expected to start every good plan with data.
Got it. Makes sense. So looking at you brought up storytelling a little bit, and maybe trying to connect with different audiences and so forth. We've seen during the course of the
You froze up again, Coop.
last few months, obviously ESPN came out with Last Dance. The
Okay, you're in and
You
out.
got me? Sorry, guys.
Good now.
Uh, you got me? Okay, sorry. The you got me? Okay.
Yes, we got you.
Okay. So last stand to kind of tentpole programming, content pieces for different sports. Like in your view, like are there other things that sports, like what kind of content should sports be kind of focusing on? Is it like the history, more behind the scenes? Like what do you think, even from a personal opinion?
I just think anything that's integrated that gets you back to the reason you tuned in from the beginning, which is the competition, the matchups, the
Okay.
rivalry, the stories about players and the participants connecting with one another, where they played together in the past, where the dust ups were, records that are being broken, and how they're intertwined with this particular matchup. I think people forget how important driving the news cycle is, how the role that some of these pregame and pre-race shows have in driving the narrative. We get wrapped up in the story of the day and what the news is, and but come game day, race day, whatever it is, people are coming to the telecast and they're really getting caught up to speed on what happened during the week. So I think because we have such good relationships with our broadcasters, as one example, NASCAR may be another, baseball, hockey would be others, that we have this inclination that, oh, these guys are going to cover the competition and the storylines, and they're going to do a great job. Don't ignore them. They're your biggest mouthpiece on the days where you have the most eyeballs.
Makes sense. We're going to skip to the questions here in a second, and I'll probably wrap up our discussion there, unless John, you want to bring anything else up, you certainly can.
Go
But
for it.
I guess the message for everybody, yeah, the message for everybody before you lose me, is to keep moving forward. And our industries are very resilient. We will recover. I know John and I have been in the business for over a couple decades now. We've been through a lot of, but we will overcome. So, and I think for humanity's sake, we can only hope that businesses and professionals like John obviously are recognizing this moment in history, and whether it's taking a stand on racial equality and some of the social justice issues that we've needed to deal with. It's appreciated and it's seen. So thank you, sir. Um, Again, before you lose me, because evidently my Zoom, we do have a question for you, John, from Wayne Gabriel. Uh, John, what is your biggest roadblock in any of your current projects, and what do you personally do to overcome them?
Great question. Hey, Wayne. I think one of the biggest roadblocks in any project is the status quo police. The ones that always bounce you back the same line, which is, well, this is the way we've always done it. Now, they are 100% right every single time that this is the way we've always done it. And that's really great. And a lot of times they also have the benefit of being right in terms of, well, it's worked this way for a long time. I'm a big believer in what got you here won't always get you there. So you do have to evolve, and I think you've got to help your teammates evolve with you, and not do it despite them. And I think just evolving a little bit and trying to help our friends in the status quo police understand that there are other things you could do that are additive, not that run in conflict with this is the way we've always done it, is a good thing for everybody.
There's a great quote in Moneyball, about adapting or dying, and I always refer to that. All right, so Mark Hyman, does the pandemic change, delay, accelerate the NFL's marketing with regard to growing the brand internationally?
It's a great question, Mark. Thanks for joining. I think initially it hurt, right? Having to cancel international games is not a good thing, right? We were forced to do so because of the pandemic. It just the reality of the situation. I think the good news is that it now creates more demand when we go back uh, to the UK to play games, and when we go back to Mexico and Canada and elsewhere. I do think there's a high demand for our product overseas, whether it's watching games that take place in the US over there or bringing our product there. Um, so I see it as both. I think we took a hit. We sorely missed going to the UK this year, but I do believe it will create some demand.
A question from Tien. Hi, Tien. Great student of mine. The MLB recently partnered with Google to open a database of videos and films for fans to freely explore and create their own videos. Would you see fan generated content as a possible platform for leagues to connect with a younger, more creative generation?
That's a great question. It's also a really tricky one, right? Because the leagues are notoriously conservative. And when you take the risk of turning your brand over to someone else, you take a risk, a real risk.
Sure.
Um, but I would say is that brands are having fun, fans are having fun and engaging with our brands every day, and to sort of be able to capture the best of the best. Um, I think we just need a little governance around that. Sort of, where are the guardrails? How can we do it in an organized fashion and incentivize people to do more, and doesn't feel like it's being done in a police state, right? Where it's over regulated, and it's in a platform that doesn't allow people to express themselves. Hopefully I answered that question.
No, I think you did. Thank you. From, I don't know if you're related, you might be, Andrew Schwartz.
I recognize the name.
Do we think teams and rights holders are working more closely than ever to bridge the gap left by the fans' absence from stadiums? And if so, any ideas on how the rights holders can help deliver value to the fans on behalf of the teams for those who cannot attend?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a good question because those things are not as inextricably linked as you'd think they are, right? You either years ago you'd wanted people to either go to the game live and pay for popcorn and beer and hot dogs, or stay home and drive up the number. And now we know that they're doing both. So I think that the partnership between sports properties, whatever they are, leagues, teams, governing bodies, and the broadcasters have never been more important. The value of the media rights continues to go up, but so does the manner in which we were reaching fans. And if you're not talking about doing it inside the confines of the live event, you're missing out on a big opportunity. And I think the broadcasters know that. I think now it's time for the sports leagues to lean in a little bit more with them and figure out specifically how do we operationalize that and give you scale in all of our markets, all 20 or so, or 30, 32, so that you're actually doing something that's scalable and that works in Chicago, LA, Philadelphia, and Dallas.
Makes sense. Thank you. We've got this one from an anonymous attendee. Uh, First of all, thanking us for holding the talk. I would like to know how reaching out to these that feel they have been disenfranchised or ignored, and an easier version this person has posed. How do you build trust or connections in an untapped market?
I missed part of the question.
Um, I'll share the easier version. How do you build trust or connections in an untapped market? And some of those markets might be feeling disenfranchised from the organization.
Like someone who feels like that brand may have not reached out to me personally.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. Look, I think, I see some colleagues who worked in motorsports on the line here. And I think they do a very good job at figuring out how to make people feel welcome at a place that is not all that welcoming. You think about where a lot of motorsports races take place physically. Um, Many of them are in rural environments, out of the way. All of them, and I mean all of them, are not intuitive in terms of figuring out how to get there, how to get around. I think there's been a couple of properties that I've seen done a good job engaging with people who either feel intimidated or feel ignored,
Mhm.
or segments of the population, and give them a little bit more personalized experience. I think, we can take some lessons here. I think about, uh, some of the Hispanic and African American journalists that just probably never chosen to cover the NFL draft before, or they've never been invited. Why not invite them? Why not give them an immersive experience? Give them behind the scenes look at what happens, help them, let them behind the curtain. And maybe that establishes a long-term relationships that helps build trust, but also sort of takes down some of the mystery, uh,
Yeah.
or demystifies what may or may not be happening at a large event. Like I said, I think motorsports does a good job at that, and I think we can take some lessons from them.
All right. We think we have time for possibly two more, but let's get to Aggie Dent. Can you share an example of fan engagement during COVID that you think stood out among the sports leagues in the U.S.? Fan engagement example.
Yeah, I'd like, I want to, in fairness to everybody, I want to choose an example that's not entirely self-serving. I did love the hearing and seeing our players, the NFL players with their families, talking about how important it was to stay home, in the early days when there was a lot of mixed messages out there. I like seeing our guys and the people who they surround them with, in that setting. I think it's just cool. I love being let in. I feel like, anyone who's going to let me in to their life, or let me, give me a sort of sneak peek was what that's like. We saw a little bit of that from some of the other sports properties, but I'll choose, I will be self-serving. I love.
Love it.
Yeah.
That's great. All right, last question from Pete LaGiovanni. Hi, Pete.
Pete,
Once the election is passed and the voter initiatives that leagues and brands are pushing are no longer current, what do you see as the next social platform that leagues and brands will be using to kind of break through the clutter? Anything you got your eye on?
well, if we're doing it right, it's going to start from listening to, you know, our players and our fans who are on the front lines of our communities. For a long time, there's everything from, sustainability to, um, just to sort of making your sport more accessible to a wide variety of audiences. I can't predict what's going to be next, but I can tell you there's no shortage of, social causes that could use. I think the one thing is we're reminded of with this thing is how powerful of a platform we have, and that,
Right.
of course, yes, that comes with great responsibility, but it does allow us to reach, down and out, in a way that other brands can't. And being inside the walls of a sports property, you have that, and particularly if you're onto something that's driven by your athletes and competitors, and that people can relate to, and you can get scale pretty quickly, with the right type of creative. So I can't answer your question. I'm not avoiding it, but, I don't know what it is, but I know sports just continues to be such this great, amazing platform for those kind of initiatives.
Outstanding. Well, listen, our time's up, and I know on behalf of John and I, thank you to Dr. Newland and Vanessa for coordinating this. Thank all of you for joining the best hour of my day. I will tell you that. John, always good to see you.
Thanks, Professor Cooper.
Did I
Thanks,
end?
everybody, for joining.
You got my Zoom, guys. All right.